CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.
Welcome to yet another episode on Conversations on African Philanthropy with me, Peggy Nkosimoyo. I'm happy to be joined by Louise Driver, the Executive Director of IPASA, Independent Philanthropy South Africa Association. Louise, I've been trying to talk to you since last year. And of course, if we try to do this at the margins of IPASA Symposia, it's very difficult because you have to make sure that things work. And I'm glad that you are here today.
Thank you.
For us to have a conversation. Yeah. Maybe let's start with the current theme of the conference. This is the 9th edition of the symposium. You have come a long way, but you want to tackle the theme of leadership in philanthropy from a bold and courageous perspective. What led you to thinking about this theme for this year, and what's your sense so far in terms of the first sessions?
Yeah. So I think why we believe in bold leadership in philanthropy is that it kind of mirrors what's happened in our country. We had strong leadership and then a vacuum of the new emerging young leadership. And in philanthropy, we need to also have that pipeline of leaders to take over from the now aging leaders within philanthropy. The younger leaders in philanthropy are bolder, they're more innovative, they're more open to risk taking, and we want to instill that culture in the current leadership and then seamlessly take it through as the next generation of leaders come.
Yeah. So I was looking at the profile of the participants when we're having, I think, tea and lunch, and I noticed a noticeable shift in terms of the age. If I look back at the first symposium and I look at today's participants, I see a great shift in terms of the age group, but also in terms of the diversity among different, whether it's color lines, it's thematic focus, representation. What has that journey been for you over the last couple of years at the helm of IPASA and paying attention to issues of diversity?
So when I joined IPASA almost 5 years ago, yes, it was majority old white philanthropy, and one of the strategic goals that I set was to try and make philanthropy, membership of IPASA, and mirror that into the philanthropy sector, is more diverse and more inclusive. And so what we did was we really expanded our membership profile in terms of who could join IPASA, and then we actively looked for those groups of potential members to bring them in. A lot of young, new foundations, BE foundations, corporate independent foundations, really growing that to create a more diverse, as you say, in terms of age, in terms of race, in terms of size, so that we can better represent philanthropy in South Africa, but also that we can learn and share from each other. And I remember when the Kwelisi Foundation joined, the team said to us, we feel we know nothing, and we're learning from all these big established foundations like the Oppenheimer Philanthropies, but actually what they brought in, they really inspired the older ones with their way they work more with their heart, with how more innovative they are, more flexible. So I think it's sharing between the members.
And there's a big gap actually in terms of representation in philanthropy. And as you were talking about IPASA, it certainly hits you that it's actually South Africa focused, and yet there's so much in the region that is happening. And IPASA is really like the place to go to for most people in the country, but there's no place to go to for people in the region. We might talk about people going to APN at the continental level or going to East Africa Philanthropy Network at the East Africa, but the Southern Africa region, there's a huge gap there. I know IPASA is especially South African, but you are influencing a lot in the region. To what extent do you see this gap being addressed going forward?
So it's very topical that you bring this up, because I had at the East African Philanthropy Network conference, I was speaking to quite a few members there who a lot were from Southern Africa, who weren't represented, those from Mozambique, Zambia, Malawi, who weren't represented by APN or EVPN or IPASA. And I started speaking to the Mott Foundation and the Southern African Trust and saying, actually, we need to establish a Southern African Philanthropy Association, and IPASA maybe can be that driver. And since then, I've had conversations. The Southern African Trust is probably a good vehicle, but there are a lot of our members who are interested, and we are well positioned. One, because we've got a model that we can grow. But two, that many of our members, the Dell Foundation, the Mott Foundation, the Ford Foundation, they're throughout Southern Africa. So we already are working there.
So, the reason why I'm raising that is because, you know that over the last couple of years we've been studying but also practicing philanthropy. And the growth in philanthropy, African philanthropy, has been really amazing over the last 15 to 20 years. And I want to get your sense as head of IPASA, what your members are seeing in terms of growth over the last 9 years since you have been holding this symposia.
It's interesting. It's whether you talk about growth, about the number of philanthropists or number of philanthropic foundations, or growth in terms of actually money spent.
And quality.
Because what I don't see a huge growth. Listen, the philanthropy sector did increase their spend hugely over COVID, and obviously everyone had to. But what we're seeing is there's been a slight decline after that, while foundations keep up or catch up. But I would say there's a growth, definitely a lot more foundations being created, and a growth in terms of change of practice for the positive. So, and COVID definitely was something which helped, and IPASA capitalized on that, trying to get people to change the way, to more participatory grant making, trust-based philanthropy, more inclusive, less rigorous style of paternalistic type of fundraising, shifting that power.
And if you look at the 9 symposia that you have held, what are the lessons that have emerged so far? 9 annual meetings of members definitely lead into a body of work. What is that body of work looking like?
So it's interesting because, and I'll be honest, I wasn't there for the first few, so I can't say. But what we have done with each successive symposium is try to make it less academic and more practical. Okay, because we need people to start practicing. What we've also done is taken the discussions, the feedback we get from the symposium, and fed it into IPASA strategy for the next year. So if we're finding that this is the priority for the philanthropy sector, or this is the need, or this is the gap, we can then say, okay, how can IPASA support the sector next year given this? And I think also, although we have had some complaints, our symposiums have become much more heart-based than pure head-based, and that is again a shift which I think philanthropy had to take, just to say, wait a minute, this is where the philanthropy sector is. We need to start thinking more with the heart and not just our head.
Talking about the head, I know that later on we will be launching the review.
Yes.
And again, it's another milestone in the life of IPASA. Not only have we published previous reviews, but we also have a change of even editors. And this time around, we've got one of the biggest volumes in terms of the review. Again, what was the drive and push towards that review? Because it doesn't take the form of an academic journal, but it's one that is based on practical fieldwork notes.
So one of the main aims of the review is to showcase and promote good, innovative, growing philanthropy, case studies, thought pieces, because we're wanting to promote more philanthropy. So if you promote good philanthropy, it will hopefully encourage more people to give and more people to give better. What has happened is the first few reviews included a lot of more prominent philanthropists and philanthropy organizations. What we've tried to do is now showcase more of the less prominent but doing incredible work to again encourage people that you don't have to be a big private foundation with 100 million rand to make an impact. You can on all these different levels of the system impacted.
Yeah. So talking about a membership-based organization like IPASA, many institutions that are membership-based are currently going through lots of identity and definitional issues. For example, they are trying to balance between getting something from, the group that they are members of, but also being in a position to implement on behalf of the mother body. What is it that you would say has kept IPASA cohesive over these years? Because most membership groups are really struggling at the moment.
So I think, obviously we're the only philanthropy network in South Africa, so we're quite unique. So if somebody wanted to, there's no competition, there's us or there's nobody else in South Africa. I think we've got we're independent. Okay, so we represent independent philanthropy, but we also independent. So we bring people together to learn, share knowledge, but we don't promote, any specific project or program. So it allows us to. So for people to become members of us and stay members of it, it doesn't mean that they have to follow any specific agenda. We also keep our core staff very lean, and that allows us to keep our operational costs quite lean, because I think that is the biggest struggle with membership networks, particularly philanthropy support organizations, is trying to find operational funding to exist, because membership fees alone don't cover those costs.
And for somebody who is working in and just hearing the word IPASA, what do you do as IPASA, as a network? How are you organized? And what are the key themes that you are focused on, at least for within your strategic period?
So you mean saying what is the incentive for someone to join IPASA?
Yeah, what is the mission, the mandate, the purpose? Why would somebody want to join IPASA?
So I think many foundations work quite in a vacuum alone, and so for them it's an opportunity to connect with others in the same space, to share and learn from each other, but also a knowledge platform where they can access any knowledge about current practice and philanthropy in South Africa, Africa globally, and also to have a common voice, particularly around certain issues which are relevant to philanthropy, but also for collaboration. And that's one thing which IPASA has been promoting a lot this year, is trying to find opportunities for our members to collaborate, because there is too much duplication and too many gaps, and we need to find ways to collaborate for maximum impact.
And what does success or even maximum impact look like for Louise, IPASA, and the board?
Yeah. So a good question, because we struggle to measure the impact of our work, because our members don't need to report back to us. They go do their work, so we don't always see, and it's a long-term thing. But the measure of our success is definitely one thing, is growth of our membership and retention of our membership. So at the moment we didn't have a single member leave this year, and we're slowly growing it. I'm very strict that we're growing it by quality and not quantity, so active members. Other success is measuring change in practice. Again, that is a long thing to measure, but we have seen, for example, the issue of climate, where many of our members said it's got nothing to do with us, who've now started integrating climate into their strategy because of our consultations with them. So to measuring the change in practice, and then also just we measure the amount of media publicity, the awareness of philanthropy in South Africa, because we're constantly trying to feed that to the public in terms of what positively is being done by independent philanthropy.
I want to go back to the issue of collaborations, because I know that maybe this was more prevalent during COVID, and it has actually continued. You have organized yourselves with, according to some specific thematic clusters. So, for example, in education, in health, in climate change. Can you speak a bit to some of those collaborations and to what end? Have there been some successes that you might want to pull out? For example, in the education space, in the climate change space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think in education and in early childhood development, and I think those are the two collaborations because we've been running with them for so long. So our initiative started 4 years ago, well, 3.5 years, when COVID hit, and we formed a COVID response education funders group.
Yeah.
And we met just every week just because things were just happening to respond. And slowly we built that group, and through that they've started collaborating. So a few of them collaborated on a mental health in schools initiative. Some of them have collaborated on a learning catch-up initiative. So, and then on the early childhood development space also, we managed to, that core group who've been coming now for 4 years to our initiatives have partnered together on initiatives both to support the teachers, teacher training and development, the ECD Centre development. So so those ones have all come out of us connecting those people and getting them to connect again, feeding them what information they need, and then they go off and follow their collaboration.
I mean, I'm forced to ask you this because, you know, in the morning session, somebody asked the question about why is philanthropy not in the at the table when public policy is being developed or designed or conceptualized. And I think that, you know, if there's a body that we should be asking is IPASA, because you are the platform for the leading philanthropists. And we know that government in South Africa has an ad hoc relationship with philanthropy, either through Treasury or the Department of Science and Technology, etc. And I'm aware that there have been some attempts by philanthropists to work with government. Is there any concerted effort from your members, yourselves, to have this, you know, working relationship with the state?
So, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that point because I was at COP27 last year and Barbara Hogan, she convened a meeting with all of us, and I stood up in front of her and said, why has philanthropy not been involved at all in the whole JET plan, the whole Just Energy Transition Plan? You know, we have not been consulted. And she was, you're right. So we have struggled to engage government. I will tell you, during COVID, we asked them, I said, I've got 50 funders in a meeting wanting to give money to solve the crisis. The schools are closed. Can you come to the meeting? And people wouldn't come. So we are working on it constantly. We still haven't, and I'll be honest, we still haven't managed to. We have now, if we go through our members on certain things, it works better. But we are struggling. And I think it's there still isn't the recognition from government of the full value of philanthropy. But
it's in our, well, let me put it this way, it's for advantage, but it's also within our capabilities to actually convince government of the value that we bring. Maybe it's time for us to start thinking about a partnership agreement or a partnership policy that philanthropy should develop in terms of working with government. The government of Rwanda did one already. So,
really? Okay.
So we could be thinking about that. So is it something that, you know, we could challenge?
No, I would love to. And I mean, many of our members are working closely with government on the certain initiatives, but only on specific initiatives. So if we could harness how they've developed those relationships to actually take it to the whole philanthropy sector as a whole and as a group. And we've now got 54 members of IPASA, strong, a lot of them big foundations with quite a bit of power, and you know, we could try and use that influence.
And what are the trends that you are seeing going into the future when you look at the work that your members are doing? Because you probably the heartbeat of philanthropy in South Africa. So if somebody comes here and says, you know, what are the trends? Where is philanthropy headed? What would you say are the 2 or 3 of those?
So do you mean in terms of what they're investing in or how they're investing?
It could be both. It could be both.
So I mentioned climate, and climate now is intersecting everything. Absolutely everything. And as now more and more money is coming into climate philanthropy, then philanthropy gets more involved. It's like so I definitely see that escalating. And the other thing I see is a lot more. I spoke earlier about participatory grant making involved, shifting the power. It's slow, but it is happening. And I see, so for example, instead of setting up an evaluation system by the funder. The funder works with the partner to set it up together. So there's more of those type of systems coming through now. I'm trying to think what else I'm seeing in philanthropy. There's still talk about dependency on the global north and how to shift that big power. But I'm not. That is still a trend. But again, I'm sure you're aware it's not happening fast enough. But it's still a big issue on the radar.
Yeah. So finally, Louise, so what do you want to get out of this 9th version of the symposium?
Well, definitely, as the title says, bold philanthropy. I think independent philanthropy should stop funding the easy projects. They should start funding the difficult, systemic change, high risk but high return, innovative type projects that many other funders can't fund. And I think to substantially change things in this country, to really be able to try address those problems, they have to start taking risks. We have to start funding innovation. We have to fund these projects which no one else wants to, these pilot projects, and they have to provide catalytic capital, because that is the way. I think that's, for me, I believe that's the only way we're going to move things forward.
Yeah. So that was Louise, the technical person.
Yeah.
Now, how did Louise get here to philanthropy? When did you realize, my goodness, I've been bitten by a philanthropic bug?
So do you want to know the truth?
Yeah.
So I had a very charitable mother and father. I grew up in a house like that. So already at 12 years old, I was knocking on the neighborhood doors, getting cans of food and taking it out to soup kitchens. And then when I was 16, I started waitressing and I started seeing all the food that was being thrown out. So I went to Operation Hunger, asked them if they'd sponsor me with buckets and their name. And then I went to Spur and Mike's Kitchen, and I organized, at the end of the day, they sought food, and then I'd go out to Mother Sisters. So I started that. So I was always running charity. Then it was charity-style things. And then I studied a business science marketing at UCT, and I did my honors in marketing for non-profit organizations, because marketing and philanthropy were my two passions. Yeah. And from then I went to start working for non-profits. Then I worked for Greater Good as corporate social investment, and then onto the Red Cross Children's Hospital Trust. I was the CEO there for 9 years, and then onto IPASA. So to be honest, it's been in my blood since I was,
Yeah. So when will Louise stop running?
When will I stop running?
Literally,
because
I know.
You're runner. We fellow runners.
Literally, because I know you are.
I've got no cartilage left in either knee, and I'm still running. I'll run till I drop. So So no. It's I think when you're in philanthropy, it's you're not doing it because it's a job. It's because you're passionate about it. So I think as long as that passion is burning, I'll keep on going. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Louise.
Thanks,
thank you so much for giving us your time. I know you are busy. That was Louise Driver, the director of the IPASA. This episode is shot at the margins of the 9th version of the IPASA Symposium in 2023. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.